Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings and such. Just happenings. Sort of in the middle of this argument, this conversation with, it's a conversation with myself, arguing some sort of philosophy with people, kind of, but it's really not philosophy. It's some sort of just psychobabble bullshit. A bunch of cliches, actually. Just cliche after cliche after cliche. And it's somehow supposed to mean something. And, just, it's too simple. It's too, my vision is just too clear. It really is just baby talk, to have these arguments with people. So, I'll just scatter this, different bits of stuff. So there's still some of this Carrie McCluppet stuff. So I took some notes because, I played it and I just figured I could paraphrase it. But to paraphrase it, I would just have to repeat all the cliches. And, it's kind of silly. I write down the cliches and then I'll respond to the cliches. So these are called vegan projects. This is all some kind of vegan thing. This love stuff, so the premise of her argument is that the veganism reduces a lot of harm, and it's a lot relative to what? I mean, relative to preventing no harm, it's a lot, but relative to the magnitude of the harm being created on Earth, it's nothing. And certainly relative to other activities that would reduce harm, like creating human beings in the first place that need to eat anything, creating any biological organisms that need to feed on other biology, generally speaking, anything other than plants. Every subject is tied to some other crappy comment that some other douchebag makes. These assholes who think life would just keep happening. Even if you exterminate it, it somehow grows back. There's no evidence of that. Planet Earth could have stayed. There's probably a high likelihood that if you start with a geranium and plant a geranium on different planets all through the all through the universe, that very few, maybe zero, would ever become an animal, would ever gain consciousness. There's absolutely no connection. There's no evidence that evolution is always going to create something. There's every bit of evidence, the fact that we can't even duplicate the process, that it's very complicated and it requires very special circumstances. And we are the byproduct of a highly improbable chain of events. Not a likely chain of events, but a highly improbable one, like winning 10 lotteries in a row or some other preposterous thing that never happens. I've used the example. You can roll Yahtzee dice forever, and all I have to do is keep making it more difficult. I could say that all 5 of the dice have to land on top of each other, and then I could say they all have to be 6s. See what I mean? I can just make it impossible. And it will be impossible. So anyway, this all goes, this is what I mean by the argument is just too scattered in too many different places, too many different bits. People are arguing the messenger instead of the message. A lot of that in the comment section. A lot of assholes who just don't have the courage to actually argue a point made, and instead wish to point out some sort of hypocrisy or some other crap that would be, even if it were true, irrelevant to the argument being made. Hypocrisy is a nice little cheap way to attack something, but first you have to attack the thing you're attacking, and then you can add hypocrisy as a crime. So first prove the person's an imbecile, and then prove they're also a hypocrite. Which I will do. Okay. So anyway, So yeah, this reduces a lot of harm thing, this vegan delusion that you're accomplishing something. No, you're just trying not to be as big an asshole, but you're still an asshole. And the process is still asshole. Nature is not a beautiful thing. Because an organism was designed, like a crocodile, to cause harm, doesn't justify it. Just as we wouldn't be justified if we were Tyrannosauruses. If we were born Tyrannosauruses, do you think we wouldn't have an obligation to become vegan? We could just justify ourselves by saying that's the way nature made us? We kill the weak and the sick and make the other organisms healthier? We're medicine? Would you use those kind of rationalizations? Since that's all this shit is. Alright, anyway. So then she talked about it answering something inside of us. The human need to serve the collective. The very fact that you have to talk about the obligation to serve the collective, the very fact that we have to have heated political arguments about our obligation to civilization, society, the byproducts of our consumption, global warming, deficit, debt, all of these things. The very fact that we have to argue this shit means this isn't some answer to something deep inside of us. It's exactly the opposite. What's deep inside of us is what's in it for me, and there's very little, and it's only when you have intelligence and you have knowledge of what you're part of, the fact that you are on a lifeboat, that there's nothing special about your life, that the other humans are essentially the same machine as you are, and that you have to earn privilege. I mean, understanding that you have to earn a privilege doesn't seem like that should take much knowledge or intelligence, but apparently it does. A huge amount of knowledge, because people don't understand it. They think privilege should be something you're born to. You earned it by being born to it. That's how they think. These are supposed to be people called intelligent, the ones we can't get along without. They're so vital, and they can't understand that. I'm mocking this ludicrous premise that we can call these people intelligent, and yet they don't understand this simple concept that they're not special, and they're not entitled to special because of their specialness. Alright, so the human need to serve the collective sounds really nice, but it just isn't really there. And it's only a manifestation of something called guilt, or a sense of responsibility, or integrity. See, if you want to have intellectual integrity, then you have to do this. Oh, I'm not a special little Coke machine. I'm just like all the other Coke machines, and my happiness isn't super happiness, and their suffering isn't, nothing, and my suffering is something. No, the suffering is all the same. The broken legs are all the same, essentially, effectively, and there's nothing special about them getting cancer versus me getting cancer. It's only special because I'm a bigot. Now, once you have that knowledge, then the obligation falls on you, and it doesn't answer something in you to say, oh, I have an obligation. No, it does exactly the opposite. It just says, oh, this being an honest, decent person is going to suck, because it's not going to be all about me, is it? And that's going to suck. So, cliche bullshit. There is no human need to serve the collective. The human need, like all other animal need, is to serve the molecule. Anyway, okay, so then she used the phrase, on a practical level, and you're just, no, this isn't practical. I mean, yes, it's good to be vegan, but I mean, this is not a practical solution. This isn't like what you'd say, hey, we've cured polio because we made the P, instead of a capital P, it's a small p. Or, you know, some silly thing like that. You know, that some disease that has all these horrible symptoms, and we got rid of the symptom that maybe made your fingernails crack. You know, so symptoms are blowing blood vessels up in your brain, and we fix the one where, you know, it cracks your fingernails a little bit. That's what veganism is as practical. It's not a practical solution to the dilemma of consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, and addiction, or crap, as I like to say. Consumption, reproduction, parasitism. That comes last. C-R-A-P. Addiction, parasitism. Yeah. I remember that and push it and such. So let's play a little bit of this crap just for the, and then I'll go back to paraphrasing, I suppose. I mean, it's amazing that you can go through just 3 minutes and 16 seconds of a video, and there could be this many bullshit cliches. Just bullshit. I mean, she must have, what, a dozen of them already hit? Just amazingly tripey.
People, so you have this group of friends who see things the way you do, but it's more basic than that. I mean, our biology, I think, is very afraid of not being important to the group.
Our biology is very afraid of not being important to the group. No, again, this is just, all of this doesn't mean shit if you got all the hot chicks in your bedroom. You have the dollar bills in your laundry room. All this bullshit doesn't mean much anymore. It really doesn't. You can feed the vanity in lots of different ways. The security, the need for security, the weakness of our intrinsic position on this planet. And yeah, there's more than one way to get to indestructibility, or whatever you want to call that. Psychological, I'm comfortable with myself. I've gotten some of that, but I know it's irrational mush. I know I can say, oh yeah, I found Einstein's unification theory. And I can feel big about myself. Or something, I still have my hair. I can feel big about myself. But I know that's crap.
Throughout evolution, you knew you had to be part of a tribe, or you'd be in danger.
Oh, whatever. We knew that. We didn't know any of that. This is all such a pile of crap. And there's always been people trying to get, like lemmings, trying to get away from the crowd. So that works both ways anyway. But talking that people somehow knew something, they're just acting on their addictions, what they're addicted to at the time, what the culture at the time has programmed them to be. Muslims are Muslims because they're programmed to be Muslims by other Muslims, not because there's some natural obligation to be a Muslim. I mean, this is just bullshit.
And so when you feel unuseful, unneeded, it brings about a strange anxiety in people.
This is all psychological crap. This really has nothing to do with a rational argument. It just has to do with this touchy-feely crap. It's just crap. So, let's... yeah, it can only take 30 seconds more. So, I'll do that some other time. And such. So, let's read some comments. There's a couple of real winners in here. Oh, God, people just suck. So anyway, yeah, I don't think there's any other news. Old fan made a, informative little video on the antenatal newsy thingy. So, what's Benatar doing and this and that. Yeah, but, I don't know. Whatever. So, stuffing balls of ooh. Stuffing balls and ooh. I don't know what that means. So we're done with that. I don't know why you had to post it twice. Dark horse. Alright. Healthy correlates to less suffering. Healthier correlates to less suffering. I mean, in some respects, obviously, but the longer you live, the more likely it is, the older you allow your body to get, the more likely it is you are to suffer and die. So, I mean, in a sense, you could say healthy, and then you drop dead at 40, or you shoot yourself, or you have the system that just says, time to go nappy nap, not wake up. Time to take the not wake up pill. So, whatever, Brandon. Ugh. If I had not run into your videos, Gary, I would be a statistic by now. God, my vision. Well, it's late, 3 o'clock. And I know you don't need the. I don't know you don't need this. Yeah, sorry, I really can't see shit. Well, I can see, but I can't think and see. It's kind of your point, but I gotta give it up, keep it up, real. You're well, whatever. So yeah, we don't do compliments. Thank you, though. Piro is gay. Hashy marky thing. Well, that's really kind of useless. Thank you, but no, thank you. Gary has good reasons to do what he does. I see we need more Garys out there. Yes, I wish I could. I wish I could give it to another Gary, but then that Gary would be stuck where this Gary is. I need to make some robots. That's what I need. Some robots that don't have to feel anything. They just, you know, serve the agenda. Another hashy mark thing. Next, blah, 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 poopa, Trump, whatever, fuck you. You are quite a spectacle to watch, sir. Sometimes I intensely enjoy your outbursts, and hey, especially the greatest misanthrope of our age. I'm not a misanthrope. I'm a randothrope. Yeah, a horny thrope or something, but I'm a lot of things, but I don't think I'm a misanthrope. I'm a person who arrived on Earth and wanted a better answer than, well, it's just kind of God's will, or it's, you know, nature is nature, you know, life is life. Yeah, that really wasn't good enough. So I don't think I should be called a misanthrope merely because I don't accept trivial mush as an answer to a question. No, sorry. How the fuck do you observe things so well and able to articulate how you describe them? Yeah, obviously by relative comparison, you do have a little articulating problem there. The rest of that sentence didn't make much sense. If there is no God, he engineered those horror shows, so fuck God. If there is a God, oh, Randy. Looks like the one guy, whatever his name was, one something or other. Yeah, he changed his name. Anyway, okay, so now this cunt, William Gelfand, William Gelfand. He's got some stupid icon, stupid no content. So, Mr. No Content. How do you have so much time to do these videos? I could ask you the question, how do you have so much time to watch them? Because it takes exactly the same amount of time. This is this might be too complicated for you. I mean, the physics might go right over your head. But it takes me exactly as long to make the video as it took you to watch it. Yeah. Amazing, isn't it? Exactly the same amount of time. They're like an hour long and you make like 4 or 6 a week, for fuck's sake. Well, look, you listen to the videos and then you write a whole bunch of comments. I mean, how can you do that? Where do you get the time for that, you welfare whore? You're bitching about people not being productive. Yes, why don't you just stop there and explain why it's good for people not to be productive? Why somebody should say, yes, let's give the unproductive a party and waste some more money on them because they're unproductive. Being unproductive is a bad thing, especially when you're so unproductive that you're actually destructive, that you consume way more than you're worth. And we know that a human life is worth about 78 cents. That's how much you can buy a little black baby in Africa. You can save it for 78 cents on average. So maybe it can perform better than you. And that's just the truth on 78 cents. So that's sort of the obligation, jackass, is not to be somebody just consuming life. If life is supposed to be precious. Obviously it's not, but anyway. They're like an hour long and you make like 4 or 6 a week, for fuck's sake. You're bitching about people not being productive and living on welfare. I'm bitching about people having children on welfare. I mean, this isn't complicated. You're not able to take care of yourself, therefore you're asking for help. Then you should minimize your expenses. You shouldn't expect color TV. You shouldn't expect luxury and privilege and, hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical care and all kinds of things. You shouldn't have that expectation, is my argument, because that stuff has to be paid for people who have to risk their lives, dying and such. You get it? And the money might be better spent saving lives somewhere else. Very valuable, productive lives are being wiped out, being annihilated, destroyed, exterminated, that you could save for much less money than you're costing. So I'm just saying the welfare whores should be humble, and they're not. They sense some sort of entitlement. They're useless sacks of dumb, ignorant shit, and yet they think they're entitled to something. They're entitled to be called useless pieces of shit. Anyway, that's the argument, fuckhead. Why don't you counter it with an argument instead of this drivel? I have to work 2 jobs to pay the bills. Well, no, I don't know that, because you have no content. There's no evidence that you do anything. There's no evidence of anything you say, fuckface. You put nothing on the line. Produce some content. Have some integrity. Put some meaning behind your drivelly words, driveler. What can I say? I don't believe you? Is that what I should say? I don't believe you have 2 real jobs. What's your job? Thief and crook? Yeah. Call center A and call center B, where you try to steal money from old people or something? What's your job, asshole? Lots of people do. Yeah, I don't think you're one of them. I wouldn't have the time in my life to do whatever it is you think you're doing. So you have time to watch the videos that take exactly the same amount of time as it takes me to make them. And yet you're bitching. Because you don't think very well. You're not a very logical person. You're just a ranting troll. What do you imagine the average American does with their time? They eat buffalo wings, get fat, smelly, they fart a lot, they're kind of disgusting. I know they sell machines that shove dildos into anuses, so I guess they buy some of those and then shove dildos in their fucking anus. I suspect. You say people aren't productive. No, I say some people, a lot of people, aren't productive. I say there's a very few people who are very productive, and they're financing the whole show. 50 million workers, let's say, in America are doing real productive work, infrastructure, roads, real things they're making, and they're feeding and clothing and housing and marble flooring everybody else. They're the productive ones. And everybody else is an unproductive asshole. Yes, pretty much how it works. You complain about welfare. Speak for yourself there. I don't even know what that means. I complain about stupid, ignorant, poor people having children. Again, the argument has always been people having children they can't afford. You don't get welfare unless you have a child, asshole. Why don't you look into it? Go see how many, go ask the homeless men who are homeless with mental illnesses, why are you homeless? And they'll say, Because you can't get welfare unless you got a kid to extort the system with. Unless you can blackmail them with harm to the baby, they don't give a fuck about you. So, read up on that, asshole. And show some respect, or take your comments and shove them up your ass. All right, I don't have no obligation to deal with your personal insinuations or accusations. I make videos making arguments. I make arguments about whether welfare whores have some right to procreate. I say they don't have a right. You want to make a counter argument how a welfare whore has a right to have children? It seems to me a privilege. Does it mean that everybody, if they want a dog, the state should pay for that too? If they want a big dog, if they want an elephant, if they want a rhinoceros, we have to pay for that? Why are they entitled to burden the state with ignorant children that statistically will never work at CERN? How many welfare whore spawn do you think work at CERN? I bet the answer is 0. Good video, Robert Plant. Fuck the fuck yeah. Well, fuck you, Carl. Icon. Cartoon man. Oh, he's a cartoony. I bet you've had some fucking dildos in your ass. So, I don't really like this timestampy thing. Timestamp pretty much sums it all up. Well, I don't know. I can't hit the timestamp here, so that's not going to do me any good. Just won't play the video. But whatever. I just think it's presumptuous to obligate people to go to the timestamp to find out what the good part is. They have to trust you. I don't know. This doesn't seem right. Great video. Made me LOL a lot. Smiley face. Okay. I mean, I really don't make them to, for that purpose, but if that's the side effect, okay. Puro is a waste of space and such. Well, it's just really not that interesting an argument. I mean, I'd rather you be more specific about his exactly inane, irritating things. I mean, even just ripping on his silly habit of keeping the microphone too fucking close to his face. Review the movie I'm Not There, 2007. I'll have to watch it to review it, so I don't know. Send it to me or something. That was Greytex. I thought it was an old Shelley Winters. Well, Greytex is still probably hotter than Margaret Thatcher was, so I'll give him credit for that. Glad to see Gary drop the hammer on the carpet. She's spewing kinds of nonsense. Yeah, that's true. Good stuff. Another timestamp. Alright, so here we go. William again. William. Well, I've listened to your response, and I have some thoughts, so who cares? First of all, I don't think you would react so whatever, unless I got to some nerve. So that's just so charming. You know, somebody could run over somebody's kid, and you say, "Oh, you're overreacting." Let's see, find some other subject. Somebody, deliberately runs over somebody's cat or something, and somebody reacts, or I mean, to make a point that somehow my reaction to your glib response to human suffering and your disgusting accusation that anyone doing philosophy that finds anything wrong with life means that they have a personal problem. These are kind of disgusting accusations, and now you're arguing another fallacious, those are called fallacies, that there's some association between how passionate people respond and whether or not they're correct or incorrect to react. So again, it's just another cliche pile of shit. You're just such a petty cheater. This isn't a counter argument to the arguments that have been made to you, you fuck. Yeah. The nerve you're hitting. Yes, you are hitting a nerve. The nerve is the human race absolutely sucks if this is what people waste their time doing. Assholes who complain about other people wasting their time, and here he is, writes all of this crap on a video. He has no accountable presence, and yet he writes all of this crap as if somebody should pay attention to Joe 11-year-old. Anyway, and just to clarify, I do not think that death is mundane personal problem. Well, I'm just saying the subject of antinatalism deals with these things that you called mundane problems, and the things they deal with is the fact that, yes, our lives are kind of futile, because you will gain experience as we become better at living, as we become better human beings, we become closer to death. It is imbecilic and upside down and back-assward. Why waste your time going through life experiences that humble you and make you into a better person just so you can perfect yourself the day before you drop the fuck dead? Yeah, it's really stupid. And then, of course, you die through a process of deterioration that is quite not mundane and is quite horrible. But at the same time, death by itself is not a terrible thing. Well, again, death is not the subject. Dying is the subject. So again, just play with the words a little bit. Manipulate them to your advantage, as if I'm talking about the idea of being dead. No, being dead is not a problem. Going from being alive to becoming dead can be a problem. Asshole. It can be a very big fucking problem, especially if you resist the process. Oh, God. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Until dead. It's not a terrible thing that people make it out to be. Why? Have you done it? What's your experience of having died, of a real disease? Nothing to it? Have you survived cancer even? Is there something you can put on the table to say, oh yeah, I know what it's like to be in the hospital for 2 years? Or I know what it's like to be in a nursing home for 10 years. Or I know what it's like to be in a mental hospital for 20 years. Do you know any of this stuff? You have personal experience? No, you don't. Fuckhead. For one thing, if you truly do wish to not die, then that means you find life to have some inherent value. So if you intrinsically find the idea of going through the process of dying, which usually means some sort of violence to your physical body. If you find the idea of doing violence to your physical body, you're saying you have some sort of mental illness, you're sick, perverted, you're irrational. Oh, it's irrational to not find the prospect of the physical violent sensations that would be associated with your body's deconstruction from its function. I mean, I could just draw a cartoon of it, right? We could just say if we were cars, like the movie or something, Little Happy Cars, and the crusher was going to crush us, it wouldn't be sensible that we're afraid of the crusher. Huh? Yeah, no. Fuck you. I find it unremarkable. I find you smelly and disgusting, and perhaps rather to be expected that you find your life to be worth living. Again, when did I say my life was worth living? I said my life is productive and has purpose. Whether or not it's worth living won't be able to be said until after I'm dead. It'll be based on whether I truly was productive, and then it would only be worth living for what it produced in terms of laying a foundation for some future accomplishment or function. But worth it to me? No. It'll never be worth it to me. And has a purpose in spite of what you see to be the rather wasteful and sad existence. I see existence as a terrible, awful trap. Yes, I've used the words addiction. Are you going to point out something that's not addictive about what we do in our lives? Some element of our consumption, our our gratification, our ego dependencies, that some element of it that isn't based on addiction? You want to do that, please? Suggest to me one piece, one psychological component of our desire mechanism that isn't completely just made out of an addictive component. But notice that this is what many people believe. Well, I don't care what, that doesn't even say anything. Most people truly believe that their lives are worthwhile. I don't care what they truly believe. How's that make what? That they believe it, that means, so if they thought they were Superman, that means they're Superman. If they think they're Aquaman, they're Aquaman. If they think they're the Easter Rabbit, they're Easter Rabbit. If they think they're a leprechaun, they're a leprechaun. No, I don't think so, asshole. But I don't think that is coherent to say that, I don't think that it is coherent to say that you are happy with your life and at the same time wish that you had never been born. Well, again, I didn't say I was happy with my life. So these are words you're putting in my mouth in that sense. I try to be as accurate and as specific as possible, but obviously you have to use some sort of shortened sentences. You don't want to go on and on and on about a description about, exactly the complexity of your affection for somebody. You could talk about how much you like your grandmother, and you could say, well, I like this, this, and this, but yeah, I really hate this, and I hate that, and I hate that. And yeah, well, overall, she's better than, my friend Bill's grandmother, but she might not be better than Jim's grandmother. I mean, do you really want to waste all that time? No. In your case, you are perfectly willing to judge the worth of other people's lives. I'm perfectly willing to make a fucking argument, you cunt! I've made arguments, okay? You're not making a counter-argument. Again, explain to me why a welfare whore should think they're entitled to produce children she can't take proper care of and has to steal money from somebody else to do it. They have to go to work. They have to die in a coal mine to finance her desire to have children as if she's fucking entitled. She's not fucking entitled. Make a fucking counter-argument or shove yourself up your own ass. This is not a counter-argument, fuckhead. Oh, God. I'm not judging. I'm making arguments. You don't understand what a lawyer does? They make arguments. I'm making the argument. I'm suggesting welfare whores suck. Here's the argument in defense of that proposition. You're the one judging, and you're saying, no, they don't, because I say so. You're not making an argument. And say there are some lives not worth living. I'm saying all lives aren't worth living. That's for fucking goddamn sure. You're just feeding addictions. You will never accomplish anything but barely clean up. If you live the ideal life, you might be able to clean up the mess you make. You might be able to. But in order for you to make this judgment, you must at least tend to agree to the idea that your judgments about the value of another life are better than your own. Your judgments about the value of another's life is better than your own. What the hell does that even mean? You must at least tacitly agree to the idea that your judgment about the value of other lives is better than your own. Why do I have to tacitly agree to any of that? I'm saying the accomplishment of your life isn't going to be able to judge. I'm saying we know in general principle, okay, what outcomes are statistically. I'm saying there's no production here, all right? If you open the door to polio or AIDS or mass murderers or this or that, that's what you're going to get. Those statistics are real. Those potentialities are inevitable. They'll be realized. You can't make life, you can't take the price out of it. It's intrinsically expensive. For instance, you say that people born with mental disorders or born with diminished capacity have no reason to live. Again, you're arguing the wrong argument. I'm not saying they don't have some reason in their head that says, I want to leave, I want to leave, I want to chase people. I'm saying there's no logical, functional, defendable reason for their existence to be created, that it is not going to be productive, and should wish to have never been born. Again, this is never anything I said, asshole. What I'm saying is if they're intelligent, they'll certainly understand that there's no way to live life without putting people in preposterous jeopardy, and that no one would want to do that. There would be they could find no purpose in saying that, oh yes, I lived and I accidentally, caused somebody to get cancer, or I paralyze them in a car accident. You could justify your life if you did that. If you paralyze some kid, you would say it doesn't matter. My life is still justifiable. I'm accomplishing so many great things that I can paralyze a whole bunch of kids and it's okay. But those kind of risks are okay with you. It's okay for you to walk around blindly, with your I love life cane, just poking at the world and hoping it all works out. Well, that's not rational. This is nothing but arrogance on your parts. Fuck you. It's an argument. You're not making a counter-argument. The argument it's again another fallacious argument that arrogance is now a reason for something to be wrong. No, it's not. You have to actually make the argument first about how the person's wrong, and then you can call them arrogant. But until you've demonstrated that they're wrong, arrogance is just rightful confidence. You don't know what lives are worth living. So I'm not allowed to have an opinion. I'm not allowed to defend an opinion. I'm not allowed to make a reasoned argument about the value of an experiment. So any experiment if Mengele wants to do an experiment, I wouldn't have a right to say, well, Mr. Mengele, I don't think that's a cost-effective experiment. I don't think by torturing those 10 people you're going to learn enough to justify the torture you caused them. I'm not allowed to have that opinion, huh? Fuck you. And which are. The only life you have any right to judge the worth of is your own. Says you. That's just a pile of shit. Any judgments can be made about anything on this planet as long as you have facts. Any trial can take place if you have facts. If you have some evidence to try, then there's a case. If there's no evidence, then you don't have a case. So for you to argue that there's no capacity for us to understand what life is, how it works, what its psychology is, what the basic mechanism is, what the basic rules of this experiment that you're conducting are, and to say this isn't a sufficient experiment. It doesn't do anything. It makes a lot of sounds and it makes some gases, but it doesn't accomplish anything. It just creates dead things. Graveyards. Fucky Yui. Second, and perhaps most importantly, well, maybe you should put the important stuff in the beginning, asshole. If one takes seriously your views and follows through, again, it's not taking my views seriously. My views are irrelevant. The articulated arguments and facts are the only thing that's relevant. Either somebody says, hey, that's a serious fact. Evolution's a serious fact. The fact that our psychology is basically addictive is a serious fact. That's what people have to take serious. My view isn't meaningful beyond the fact that it's a way of, it's like an artist, putting enough paint on the canvas to make it interesting or something. But the thing on the canvas is the thing that's important, not just the colors. And follows through to its ultimate logical conclusion. Okay, so they take my views seriously and follow through to the logical conclusion, which is what? saying, hey, life is really stupid, let's not subsidize any more of its production, and let's do everything we can to gracefully exit. One finds some rather incoherent conclusions. Liar. None that you'll demonstrate with a single fact. For instance, you might say that it's wrong to create people unless they impossibly consent beforehand. Again, the fact that you can't get consent doesn't change the fact that it should be required, that it's too important a thing not to have. Now, if you were doing it to yourself, you don't need consent. But we know that my brain isn't my mommy's brain, that my brain isn't my daddy's brain, that my brain is my brain, and my experience will happen to me. Alright? They have no right to project, to say, I know what he will want. I'm qualified to make this decision for him. I will pick a straw and I will stick it in his pocket. I'm sorry, that's not legitimate. It's not legitimate to tell somebody, I dealt cards to you, right? We were playing poker. I dealt the cards. Yes, you weren't playing, but I dealt them for you, and you lost. You're saying it's okay to do that, as long as you know for sure, well, you would have played. You would have wanted to play, I'm sure. No, you can't do that. So the fact that you can't get consent doesn't change the fact that for any activity of this weight, you would have to have consent. So you're still violating consent. It's a significant problem. It's a real violation. Now, if there was some guaranteed golden egg that you could show, some kind of real productivity, like the human race saves the universe from being in suffering torture, that the human race existing killed, the cosmic Mangala that would have tortured a galaxy. Now, if you could show where human beings were so fucking valuable, then you could say, okay, a little violated consent, no big deal, because there's so much purpose. But you're not going to be able to do that. Just like Mengele is not going to be able to justify his silly experiments. All right. Consent beforehand. But you could just as easily, no, you won't be just as easily say this. You could just as easily say that it's okay to create people unless they impossibly refuse consent beforehand. Again, the obligation is not to ever have to refuse consent. So that's just ludicrous. You don't ask somebody beforehand, is it alright if I run you over with my car? I want to get drunk, I'm going to run you over, so it's okay with you that I run you over as I drunk drive or something? I mean, I'm just saying no one would ever consent to something if they're being asked for consent. So again, you can't turn consent into something that you can turn upside down, because consent means they have the choice. It doesn't mean that you make the choice. So again, you're just violating consent by, in both cases, saying you're qualified to make a choice for them. Either way, you seem to want to invoke hypothetical consent. No, I'm invoking the principle that any jeopardy, when you're going to pull straws and put them in pockets, that you have the obligation to be certain. Alright? Now, if you're telling me you're certain it's justifiable, you're certain their suffering doesn't matter, that you are certain that their suffering is more than overwhelmed by the happiness of the deluded retard. So the deluded retard playing with the balloon makes the person in the mental institution getting the electroshock therapy fine and dandy. You know that for certain. So you know for certain how much suffering a child should endure to be saved from cancer. You know all these answers, and you can make these decisions for other people. Now, if you are certain, then you can draw straws. Okay? But only if you're certain. That's the way it works. And quite obviously, your certainty would be a delusion, because there's no way you could be certain, is there? There's not enough evidence for certainty, is there? So you're the failure. You're the one with the aggressive, I'm going to draw a straw policy. I'm the one arguing for the fail-safe, unaggressive policy. So I don't have to have certainty, and I don't have to have the evidence to justify certainty. So I'm free of both obligations. But even if we said I have the obligation to be certain, the truth is I can evidentially explain why I'm certain of the fail-safe. I can defend fail-safe. You can't defend high risk. All right. But how can you know? You're the one saying you know. You can't be sure. You're the one saying you're sure. You're sure enough to put a short straw in somebody else's fucking pocket. You're sure enough to deal them a hand they didn't ask to be dealt. You fucking cunt. Also, if you flatly reject the concept of hypothetical consent, again, I don't accept the concept of talking about this as if in a sense of hypothetical. There's no point in hypothetical consent. Consent should be real, and you can't get real consent. So you're going to violate your obligation to have real consent because you say you're entitled somehow. You're entitled to violate your obligation to have real consent. You don't have it. You say it's impossible to get. I don't care if it's impossible to get. The standard is built by the obligation of the risk. As soon as you are imposing risk, any amount of risk, then the obligation for consent grows with the risk. The more the risk, the more there's an obligation to have fucking consent. If you're dealing cards or drawing straws for something irrelevant like blue bubblegum or pink bubblegum, yeah, go ahead. Who cares? No risk, really. But that's not what we play for in life. What we play for in life is fucking ALS or AIDS or malaria or all kinds of horrible things, you stupid cunt. Alright. Also, if you... logically, you must condemn good Samaritans. I probably do. I mean, I don't think... I condemn people who... with merely good intentions and no rational pragmatism for saving the lives of unconscious strangers. No, because the equation is they can't know what the right thing to do is. They don't know. If I prevent somebody from getting run over in the street, I don't know whether they're going to cure cancer or molest children. So the obligation, though, is just the general one to say, prevent harm, okay? And in death there's harm, in the process of it, and there's always harm in something happening by accident. I mean, there's a correlation between doing things sloppy and doing things surgically. Scalpels are better than sticks for surgery, that kind of thing. So you do things on purpose and you do them carefully. So anytime somebody's preventing something from happening by accident or by act of nature, they're probably doing the right thing, because acts of nature shouldn't decide destiny. Destiny should be decided by a process of thinking and analyzing and appreciating the possibilities and judgment. And if no judgment, if the system isn't judging, then it's reasonable for somebody to intervene and say, if there's somebody's going to die, then they should die for good cause or good reason or for function, not because there's a pebble in the road that I could pick up. There's a banana peel on the sidewalk I could pick up. That shouldn't be deciding. Banana peels on sidewalks shouldn't decide destinies. It's a simple way to say it. I wasn't very articulate, but that's the simple explanation. It's always a good idea not to let banana peels, rather than our brains, decide destiny. Asshole. But maybe you, being a hermetic kook hell-bent on preventing morality and spreading like a disease your disgusting views on inherent moral vicariousness of human life. Whatever. Again, more just drivel. Your argument isn't, I mean, whether I'm a hermit or a kook is again irrelevant until you demonstrate with a fact or an argument. You have to demonstrate the irrationality or the unreasonableness or something in the argument that's defective, and you're not doing any of that. You're just making these generic statements as if somebody should be impressed because you made these accusations. You didn't defend these accusations with anything called evidence. Yes, the fact that you find my views disgusting is reasonable because I find you disgusting. Everything about you. Anyway. Reject CPR training as well. I don't know. Well, again, I'm not going to defend people doing. Many people choose to say do not resuscitate. So, how effective it is. This whole idea of saving lives. People always use that term, saving a life. No, you can lengthen a life. You can't save a life. So whatever crisis you get somebody through, there's going to be some other crisis that's going to kill them eventually. So letting them half die, and then letting them half die again, and letting them half die again, and then letting them fully die, isn't too bright, in my opinion. So if somebody's got some sort of catastrophic defect, it's probably best that you just let it finish them off, rather than drag out their suffering. So I can give at least 3 examples. There's always anecdotal examples. Certainly there's plenty of people that have been saved, like the modern mystic, bypass surgery. Worked great for him. Bill Clinton worked good for him. So yes, some people are able to reclimate their catastrophic brokenness and recover from it. But I also know many cases where they weren't. So they ended up just having a heart attack, and then 6 months later another heart attack, and then 6 months later a really bad heart attack, and so they just ended up spending 3 years in the hospital, effectively. Very expensive, very uncomfortable, very miserable, very horrible. So yes, saving their life probably wasn't a great idea. Fucking cunt. Alright, so I did waste an awful lot of time on this asshole. This is a comment. You're just like, why the fuck would this asshole post this comment on this video? It was the meaning of life one. I like to have a conversation about religion. Why? Why would anyone waste time on religion? I mean, religion is just pathetically stupid. Especially, I mean, after the last, the Human Genome Project, I mean, should have been like the last nail in the coffin. I mean, once they did this, once they got these alleles, all this shit in the fucking goddamn computer, it's game over. There's no fucking God. It's been over. It's always was over. I mean, it's just not a conversation we should have to indulge in. You just point, somebody says, I have a need to be religious, or I feel religious, or something. You just say, you're a fucking idiot. Specifically, the connection of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Who the fuck cares? If you're willing, I don't know, I'm not. We should get a group together and in a hangout to talk this subject. So who the fuck could care? What fable is more interesting? Goldilocks, Red Riding Hood, or Gary fucks the bitches? Couldn't think of a third one, actually. Anyway, deleted that shit. You had high hopes for Carrie, huh? Yeah, I guess. Well, I had hopes that she wasn't an imbecile. I mean, she seemed pretty smart, but yeah, there was indications. I mean, I did do that little interview thing with her, and there was a couple of points where you're just like, what? Oh. And the more you talk to her, yeah, the more you start hearing this shit, and you're just like, what is that about? So, anyway. The phrase, you love... Oh, this one really annoyed me. Yeah, the phrase, love your neighbor as yourself, seems to be another way of saying, concern yourself with the well-being of others. Yes, but see, she's talking about it as if it's some sort of native, intrinsic thing, and quite obviously, that fundamental golden rule of the Bible, which is basically eliminates the need for the entire Ten Commandments, right? It eliminates the whole need for any other moral statement, in a sense, right? If you actually do treat other people as you would treat yourself, you're really not going to be able to harm them in any way whatsoever. You're not going to be able to steal or crook them or lie to them or do that, but you don't do any of that shit to yourself, right? Oh, he's got a silly pit bull as an icon. I mean, what a fucking idiot. I mean, you would want your neighbor to put you at risk by putting a pit bull in their yard. You would think that's rational. Oh, I'll treat my neighbor like myself by having a vicious dog that can kill them in less than 2 minutes, and you just go nuts any old time, and just wipe out their kids and shit. I'll put their kids at risk. And I'm glad that people do that to me, that they put my children at risk for no good reason over a dog choice. And it's not even an attractive dog. It's ugly as fuck. It's hard to understand. Anyway, so you're not even getting it, right? So this has been in the Bible, 10,000 years, 2,000 years of babbling this rhetoric, and the human race isn't even close of living to this. And her argument was, this is some sort of intrinsic, the beating heart of mankind just wants to do this, treat other people like yourself thing. No, they're not even coming close to meeting that mark. So you just totally missed the point, don't you? You idiot. Just as you concern yourself with your own well-being. In that context, it seems to be a very distinct concept from loving. In that context, it seems to be a very distinct concept from loving the taste of candy or becoming infatuated with someone based on their appearance. Again, but it has nothing to do with anything intrinsic. So the fact that people like buffalo wings, chicken, they like to eat animals because it tastes good. Clearly, there's no intrinsic function that says, no, that's wrong, I'm stealing from the animal, it's welfare. The desire mechanism that makes us attracted, that has no real merit built into it. And again, this idea, this concept of treating others like yourself, which people aren't even close to. So clearly there's no connection between desire, sexual desire, the clear passion for aesthetics, attractiveness, the strength of that compared to the strength of people's desire to treat other people like themselves have nothing in common. One is so powerful and one is so incredibly weak. So obviously